Welcome to our Monday Night Wellness series, and this evening we're going to be discussing spring allergies and your immune system. And I love our subtitle, Say Goodbye to Flonase. And we have Dr. Steve Cheney, Barbara Lagoni, and Hannah Sherpin, who will be our presenters this evening. So
very good.
And you guys have to say.
Let's we want to tell you a little bit about what we're planning to cover tonight. First of all, we want to talk about the cause of allergies. There's a difference between the holistic approach to health conditions and traditional medical approaches, who tend to identify symptoms and then treat the symptoms. And the holistic approach is a lot more about identifying the cause and then strengthening the areas that need help, that are the cause of allergies. We'll talk about what those medical approaches are. Particularly, we'll go through some of the medications and the side effects that most people are not aware of. And then we'll talk about some of the product collections that have been really beneficial in strengthening the immune system, normalizing the immune system, and then we'll make some dietary recommendations. So that's kind of the plan for the evening, if you want to click. And so just a few facts to get us started. An allergy is actually an overreaction of the human immune system to some foreign thing. And this reaction, the immune system is not operating properly. And if you think about why are people allergic to normal things like trees and grass and cats and dogs and so on? So we want to understand where it's coming from, and then the immune system is clearly one of the areas we want to work on to get it back into balance. But it affects a whole lot of people, over 60 million people with allergies. That's 1 out of 4. And it is rising, 18% increase over the past 10 years, and that is on the way up. One click. And the
Hannah? Mm-hmm. Sure. It's one of the things about the allergies. It is the most frequently reported chronic condition in children, and it limits activities for more than 40% of the children. And if you think of these statistics, 8 million with respiratory allergies, another 7 million with non-respiratory allergies, 400 Americans die each year due to drug allergies from penicillin, 200 from food allergies. But think about that. Just from drugs alone, isn't that so sad? And the annual cost of allergies to us as a nation is $7 billion. Nearly $6 billion of it is in medications. So it's going to be so enlightening for you to hear all this information tonight, and I can't wait to hear Dr. Cheney myself. The major cause... Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even as adults, they say that that's actually the major cause of job absenteeism. 4 million people lost work days this last year alone, and that's another 700 million lost in productivity, which is really sad situation. And, one of the things in our area, our top allergist in our area actually wound up using our products for his own family's allergies. So feel really good about that.
Because it works very well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's look at asthma then for a moment. It affects 20 million Americans. But it has really increased in children, quadrupled in kids over the last 30 years, now affecting 1 out of every 13 children. When you go to a school and you go to the nurse's office, you will see all the asthma medication in the nurse's office that the kids come and have to be made available to them.
And, I just heard that 1 in 4 emergency room visits for children is for asthma.
It's for asthma. Mm-hmm. So, Professor, would you walk us through a bit about the medications and sort of what has been the traditional medical approach to allergies?
Well, so there are a number of medical approaches. Now, the first one listed on the slide here is corticosteroids, and believe it, that is not a that's not a first-line type of treatment. It's something that should be reserved for very serious allergy problems that can't be cleared up by any other means. But unfortunately, like many other medicines, it's overprescribed. And if you're an adult, one of the major things that you need to know is that it can cause osteoporosis and muscle weakness. If you're thinking about children, where it's really problematic, it can delay their growth if you're using this on a chronic basis. Antihistamines are probably the most common, or certainly most common for a long period of time. These block histamines, which is an inflammatory chemical that's part of this whole allergic process. The brand names that would come to mind are Claritin, Zyrtec, Allegra. Benadryl is another name. And here again, you've got side effects. The main thing from antihistamines that you've heard over and over again is it can cause drowsiness and a slow reaction time. And according to the Mayo Clinic, these kind of sedating medicines should not be given to children. But you and I all know of probably kids in which their pediatrician has actually recommended it to them, even though the medical experts are saying that's something that shouldn't be done.
Yeah, lots.
Okay. If we go to the next slide and we look at Benadryl, that's a special type of antihistamine. It has a little bit more side effects, but you also find this in things like Nitol and Sominex and Unisom sleep gels. I remember trying that Nitol when I was a college student, and college students don't have much sense anyway, and I figured that would be that would be a good way to I could sleep and I couldn't go to sleep. That Nitol absolutely kept me wired all evening long, so that was not a successful thing for me. But the more common side effects are the sedation, drowsiness, that sort of thing. You got a lot of things: loss of appetite, constipation, nausea, but it can get serious because this is also this is akin to the stimulant. So you can get palpitations, increased heart rate, tremors, those sorts of things. And there's even some evidence that you can have long-term effects in the brains, cognitive impairment, which is not good for kids. And if you're an adult, it can slow down the thought process. It can be associated with Alzheimer's. These are not things that you really want to be taking on a daily basis unless you absolutely have to. Okay, Singulair is one of the newer ones. It acts by a different mechanism. It interferes with another mediator of another class of inflammatory mediators called leukotrienes. And here it's interesting. It's like a lot of the drugs when you hear them advertised on TV, and the drug is for allergies, but the side effect sounds pretty much like what it was trying to prevent. One of the side effects is upper respiratory infections.
Oh.
So trying to get rid of allergies, but it can cause upper respiratory infections.
Wow.
If you think about kids, ear infections, that's a huge problem with kids anyway. Why would you want to take something that would increase the risk of ear infections and sore throats? But again, the FDA warns about the psychological symptoms, the irritability, the anxiousness, the insomnia, the hallucinations, even in a few extreme cases, depression and suicidal thinking, particularly in teens. So, it's not something to be taken lightly. So if we kind of look at the overall recommendations, the Mayo Clinic points out that there's some significant side effects of allergy medications. The Food and Drug Administration, looking at the over-the-counter cough and cold preparations where they include things like the nasal decongestants, antihistamines, cough suppressants, and so forth. These are things that they don't recommend for children because they can cause serious and potentially life-threatening adverse effects in young children. And MedWatch, which is the FDA's safety information, basically says that this has been shown to lead to death, convulsions, rapid heart rates, decreased levels of consciousness. So the FDA is really not big on these being used, particularly in children.
But we understand that people do need to function and they do need to breathe. And so these medications are sold by the millions. And so one of the reasons we want to do our wellness webinars is to give people some ideas of options that have worked well for others. And we want to begin tonight by telling you about a very simple concept that can be applied to lots of approaches to our health, but particularly tonight we're talking about allergies. And it came from a book that I read a long time ago called Never Be Sick Again by Raymond Francis. And he said, from a biochemical perspective, there's really only one disease, and that is malfunctioning cells. And where they malfunction, we'll give it a name. We'll call it diabetes, or we'll call it Alzheimer's, or we'll call it heart attacks and so on. But he said there are always two causes for cells to malfunction. One is exposure to toxins, and toxins can come in a variety of ways. It can be environmental things, but your body even can produce toxins if you're eating the wrong things and exposed to the wrong stuff. And the case that we're talking about with allergies tonight, we're talking about secondhand smoke and toxic cleaners and air pollution and mold and things like that. And the second cause is lack of nutrients. It's curious to me that today you rarely hear people talk about you are what you eat. But when I grew up, that was what everybody talked about. And it was so logical to me that you cannot make healthy cells out of thin air. You can't make it out of goldfish crackers and Girl Scout cookies. I mean, you can't, you have to have nutrients, and the human body was designed to eat foods that nature provided that grow out of the earth, which is primarily vegetables. And so, fresh green things and nuts and seeds and that sort of thing. And so the further we get away from that, stress and sugar and refined carbs, caffeine, alcohol, medication, those things which we Americans eat in very high amounts, they all deplete nutrients. Not only do they not contribute anything, they actually rob the body of the few nutrients they have. And so if you go to the next slide, Joe, there's really three natural approaches then to allergies. One is to normalize the immune system, strengthen it where it needs to, normalize it in other regards when it's overreacting to things, restore the health of the digestive tract, and we'll explain to you why that's the case, because somewhere between 70 and 80% of your immune system is located in the gut. Who knew? And so we begin looking at, the foods we put in our gut and the probiotics that live in the gut. It's a major way to begin to restore health, and then removing toxins from our environment. Okay, Steve?
All right, so let's talk about Shaklee products, really products for allergies. The title here says for the immune system. We're looking at helping to control the immune system. We're talking about normalizing the immune system, because really, when you're talking about allergies, the inflammatory process and the immune system that it stimulates, that's what causes the problem to begin with. So we're trying to normalize the immune system. One of the products that's great for that, and we're going to talk in more detail about each of these products in a minute, is Nutriferon. But, the Shaklee alfalfa is something that's been around for years. That's one of Dr. Shaklee's original products. And, those two products alone are enough to help many people. These are often people who are already using Vitali or Vitalizer. They add those two products, and those two products alone, in addition to just basic nutritional support, can make a huge difference. And if we're talking about kids, of course, we'll be talking about Incredivites. And then there's vitamin C, the Optiflora capsules, and that's because a lot of the immune system is in the gut. And if the gut is healthy, then the immune system functions better. But also if you have a leaky gut, that in itself can start to cause inflammation and get that inflammatory process going. So you really want to have the friendly bacteria in your gut. Garlic is something that's been used for years to strengthen and normalize the immune system. And the last one is not so much for the allergies and inflammation, but just to remind you that if you really need to strengthen the immune system, you're coming down with a cold or the flu or something like that, then we have that great defend and resist echinacea complex. So let's move to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the alfalfa. Alfalfa is actually interesting. It's been used since the time of the Egyptians as something for allergies, something for inflammations. We know now that it's anti-inflammatory. It has an antihistamine, and the tablets are small, so you can crush them up if you're doing it for your kids. Mix them into things. When our son was little, his applesauce was always green because I don't think he knew that applesauce came in any other color. But that was the alfalfa. You can add the chewable seed and mix them together, for a better taste. And you don't need to.
It tastes like grass. It tastes like minty grass, and our grandson just scarfs them. He's 3 years old, and he just gobbles them. But what an amazing plant that is.
It is. Those roots go 30 feet into the earth. Who knows whether it's that unique balance of trace minerals, whether it is the chlorophyll, whether it's some other. It's interesting. Alfalfa has been known for years and years and years, but it's still one of those mysteries in that we don't know exactly why it does what it does. But that's sort of the mainstay. And I use alfalfa. I had severe allergies. I used alfalfa for years. That did a pretty good job of controlling them. But when I added nutriferon, that's when they completely disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
It's a natural mixture of 4 plant extracts. It was developed by a Nobel laureate, Nobel Prize winner. Took 40 years to develop it. Looked at hundreds of different herbal extracts to find the perfect blend. And what it does is it stimulates the body to make its own interferon. And I think the best way to describe the role of interferon in the body is it is the conductor of the immune system. So if we need to strengthen the immune system, interferon will signal a fortissimo. That's those of you who are music aficionados. That means it stimulates the immune system. It makes it louder, if that were the orchestra. If the immune system is a little bit out of whack, out of control, like it is when we have allergies or asthma, it stimulates a pianissimo. It kind of it settles it down. So that's why I call it a conductor of the immune system. That's why I talk about normalizing the immune system rather than stimulating or strengthening the immune system. Next slide. And so the other things we want to do, we want to make sure we have the nutrition we need. So we're going to start with the Vital E, or Vitalizer is even better if we're an adult, or the Incredivites if we're a kid. We want to make sure we have enough protein, and the right kind of protein. That could be the energizing soy protein or the 180 smoothies. Extra vitamin C, and I believe Hannah's going to talk about that in a minute. And the Optiflora capsules, when you're going to hear, that's the next slide, and I believe, Barb, you're going to tell us all about why those are great.
I will indeed. And I just, by the way, Joe, got a text from Kristen Jakubowski that she was able to hop on our call tonight. So when we get to the children's slide, I want to slide her in so she can share the story of her little girl. So we mentioned that about 70 to 80% of the immune system is in the gut, and one of the very first places that I like to get people started when we are working on the immune system is with this wonderful little tiny capsule that's the size of a pearl called Optiflora. People I think are learning more about probiotics. They're you see the commercials on the yogurt commercials on TV, a lot about them. What they don't tell you is that probiotics are very fragile. they're easily destroyed by stomach acids. And one of the researchers at Shaklee told me that probiotics were the single most requested product for 10 years before Shaklee was able to produce this Optiflora product because technology had not evolved far enough for them to be able to guarantee live delivery of those wonderful, complete, and very fragile probiotics to the lower intestine. And they came up with this amazing triple encapsulation around those probiotics that allowed them to pass through the stomach acids unharmed. That is unique to Shaklee. Their research showed that most probiotics, when they are ingested, 90% of them die before they ever even leave the stomach.
Oh, can I add to that too?
Please, yes.
I just was told by one of our people one of our consumers who's just recently had some serious difficulties, and she was working with the doctor for infectious diseases for our state, and he told her he doesn't believe in probiotics because in his research they took all these different probiotics and they found nothing alive in any of them. So then, of course, she was able to tell him about Shaklee's Optiflora. I thought that was interesting.
Well, see, a consumer has no way of knowing because they say it has X amount of microbes at the time of manufacture, but as soon as it goes out of the factory, they start to die. So that very good point. So that is a tremendous product. And I just got a call today from a woman whose daughter was having 8 years old, severe stomach aches, and they discovered there was H. pylori issues, and she put her on Optiflora, and a week and a half, she hadn't had a single episode in a week and a half since she'd started with it. So it's a wonderful product. And then the other one is garlic. Garlic, if you can eat garlic fresh and raw, which means if you don't have to be around people, it will have this natural antibiotic, antibacterial, antiviral effect. But if you cook it, you lose a lot of that. And so what I loved about the Shaklee Premium Garlic Complex is it has all the potency of the fresh raw garlic without the odor. So it is, you can be social with it, but it is amazing. And if you think of garlic as two categories, it has these wonderful immune properties, and then it has these wonderful heart benefits as well. And so garlic, it acts for a lot of people almost like a natural antihistamine also. So very effective for that. Hannah, before I know you're going to be talking about vitamin C, but could you just briefly share the story of in your family of your allergies?
Sure. Well, first of all, from the time I was small, I had some allergy issues, and they just really worsened the older I got, and got to the point where I couldn't walk down the grocery store aisles of cleaning and laundry products without sneezing, having stuffy nose, watery eyes, and so on. And that just kept getting worse and worse. And then our oldest daughter, Hallie, when she turned 3, started to go to bronchitis. And then she'd go to pneumonia and wind up with hospital stay as a result of that. And then our daughter, Ashley, our youngest daughter, had such environmental allergies that she'd have to come inside if Alan was cutting the lawn. She just couldn't be outside for a lot of the fun activities that she wanted to be. It really was affecting her a lot. And Shaklee came into our lives, and I got over allergy problems that were bad enough that the doctors really were wanting me to take shots at that point. And the top allergist in our area, as I think I mentioned earlier, used our alfalfa for his own family's allergies. And one of the things that we're so impressed is because of what was happening for all of us. Hallie never has had another bout of bronchitis or pneumonia. And Ashley, although she still has allergies, is able to control the symptoms with Shaklee to the point that in high school she actually did the lawn mowing herself on the tractor mower, and certainly is outside a lot for her children's activities today. And one last one is with our cat. We had a cat who came to us as a result of a tornado that literally threw him on our doorstep. And we called a real original name of Kitty. And Kitty developed asthma very, very quickly it became obvious, and finally she was actually going into turning blue, and we were rushing her to the vet, and he said, we really need to put her down. This just isn't good. And we said, let's try just one more thing. So we started giving her an alfalfa and a vitamin E every night, and she lived for many more years without ever having another episode. So it's obviously also not a placebo effect for sure.
Like that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and vitamin C, of course, is so important for allergies as well. And one of the things that's so impressive about our vitamin C is that it's meant to stay in the bloodstream for over 5 hours, which is pretty impressive since vitamin C is water soluble. But in actual Shackley studies, it actually was still in the bloodstream for 12 hours, which is like unheard of. And one of the things when we say it's depleted by stress, well, all our immune nutrients are depleted by stress in as early as 12 to 14 minutes under stress, and some of us need whole bottles because of that, I think. But alcohol, smoking, in fact, they say a pack of cigarettes, you destroy 500 milligrams of vitamin C with just one pack, and some people smoke more than a pack a day as well. And then the birth control pills, of course, when we're in trouble with infections or illness, we certainly have increased needs, and then, of course, pollution. And it does act like a natural antihistamine. So, therefore, it's often used either in prevention or treatment of colds and viruses. And the wonderful thing is that rather than having side effects, we have side benefits, like it helping prevent cataracts, helping with ligaments in our connective tissue, helping prevent varicose veins, helping in wound healing, even nosebleeds and bruising. And I have had many experiences with people that had severe bruising that it actually went away once they got on the Shackley products. In fact, one woman looked like she had leukemia if you saw the bruises on her arm. And 3 weeks she was cleared up totally.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk about defend and resist. And then, Joe, if you would unmute Kristen, and this might be a good place to have her pop in and tell us a story about Madison. Defend and resist is an echinacea product. So this is one you keep in the kitchen cabinet. You keep it in your desk drawer at work. But when you feel a cold coming on, you feel a virus coming on, you feel the allergy attack coming on, you take lots. And you can chew them or you can suck on them like a lozenge. They're incredibly soothing, especially if you have a sore throat. But they contain more than echinacea. There's elderberry extract and larch tree extracts, and there's zinc in there. And they believe, one of the theories I saw is that they think it just surrounds the viruses and prevents them from reproducing. It speeds up the white blood cells so that they can swim through your bloodstream and gobble up the viruses. If you, in our family, what we do is when we feel something coming on, we will take 6 of those DRs, we call them, and 6 C's and 6 garlic and 4 to 6 on the Nutriferin, and then we go to bed. Allow our bodies to rest and to fight. We've given it something to fight the viruses with, and voila, you wake up the next morning and you can breathe and you're all better. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful product. Just remember, you take it at the onset when something is coming on to give your body a blast of ammunition to help fight viruses. So, Kristen, can you hear us? Let's see if Kristen, is it unmuting? Kristen?
She is unmuted.
Okay. All right. If you hear her come in, then we'll talk her in. Let's hop to the next slide. And Hannah, just talk to us a little bit about using safer cleaning products for removing toxins.
Well, yes, and that's another great thing. I didn't have to buy any of those products as I walked down that aisle that I had to sneeze all the way down, because these products are so safe. They are so powerful, green, smart. One of the top allergists in our area also told me that in their allergy journals that it always mentions Shackley household products for people with allergies. And you can see why, because of the kind of ingredients we use. So a non-toxic home, and also can make it a non-allergy home too, or non-allergic home. Okay, do you want to say more?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the asthma, and just sum things up here. Again, if we're thinking about asthma, it is an inflammatory condition. So we want to normalize the immune system because, again, the inflammation and the immune system are tightly linked. We're going to provide the nutrients with the vitamin C, with the Vital E multivitamin, or for kids, the Incredivites. We want to make sure they're getting enough vitamin C. Already talked about Nutriferin and alfalfa with respect to allergies, also critically important for asthma, and Optiflora. So these are all things for the immune system for reducing inflammation, the omega-3 fatty acids. So that would be the Omega Guard, or for kids, the Mighty Smarts. And again, vitamin C is important there. But if you really think about putting all these together, most of these nutrients are in Vitalizer. So Vitalizer plus Nutriferon plus alfalfa would really cover the ground here. But we also need to think about diet. So Hannah, take that away.
Well, sometimes it can be just a few simple changes in the diet that can make such a difference. So one of the things, a good idea, is to avoid the mucus-producing foods. Now, many people know that dairy can often produce the mucus in the system, but a lot of people aren't aware that even the sugary foods, and certainly sugary soft drinks, the wheat, baked goods, all of those things can have an effect. A lot of people are finding that going to a more gluten-free diet is benefiting them even if they're not so-called allergic to gluten or have a gluten sensitivity. So all of these things, just even working just towards eating 6 to 9 vegetables a day as opposed to some of those other foods, can make a major, major difference, even though there are a few small changes. And I know sometimes change is hard, especially in diet, because we're so based on taste in our society. But you know what? You can start to get to the point where you're going to love the veggies, too. Because the body detoxifies.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Kristen, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes. I talk as close to your computer as you can. And can you tell us your story about Madison?
Oh, I would love to. I'm so glad that you had me on. I just have a quick story, but I do think it's very pertinent to what we're talking about. And, you know, being a parent, I think it will speak volumes for others. But my daughter, at about 3 years old, was diagnosed with seasonal allergies at her appointment. She had been having a few symptoms, and so the doctor said, all right, you know, let's put her on some Zyrtec. And it was probably halfway through the season at that point. Started the Zyrtec and, you know, did okay that season. Then came to last spring, which was right at the beginning of the season, she was having some symptoms. So I put her back on the Zyrtec, and within about 2 days, I noticed that my child, who is a wonderfully adjusted child, never gets timeouts, or very rarely, was going to about 5 or 6 timeouts every day for talking back behavior and just being sassy and just behaviors we hadn't seen in her before. And I thought it was a little odd, but then again, 4-year-olds can sometimes have their issues. And anyways, I figured, you know, it would go away. And at one point, she was in a timeout, and I heard something downstairs, and my mom was with me, and I said, do you hear that? And we went down to check on her, and sure enough, she was in the corner where she was taking her timeout. And she was making a huge pile in the corner of spit, of saliva. And at that point, I looked at my mom, and I was almost in tears, and I said, you know what, this isn't my child. This is not something that she would have done in the past. This is not something we had ever seen from her before. So I went ahead and hopped online and did a little research about the Zyrtec, and was completely stunned to find out that if there was one story, there was hundreds of stories of parents who had seen the same type of behavior change from the Zyrtec. They would find from the AM dose, there would be these behavioral changes, and if they switched to a PM dose, the children experienced night terrors. And so needless to say, I stopped immediately, and within about 36 hours, the behaviors were gone. So I of course at that point decided no more. I was never going to do this again. I would rather wipe noses all day and say God bless you 100 times a day than see these behaviors. So then that was last year around this time actually. I had a new baby at home and I had started alfalfa to improve my milk supply, and noticed that my seasonal postnasal drip completely went away. And so I started giving a little bit of alfalfa to Madison and noticed a little bit of change. I wasn't wiping noses as much as I was before. And I had also added Incredivites and Optiflora to her daily routine and could not believe within months everything was gone. And I thought maybe she had just passed through the allergy season, but then fall came and her allergy symptoms were still completely under control. And I was so happy that I've continued on that program, and I've actually added chewable C. And somebody mentioned earlier about the fact that their child doesn't know that applesauce isn't green. Well, in our house, we now call it awesome sauce because we add so much stuff to our applesauce that I don't even know how much apple is still in there. It's all
So great.
So
great.
We call that awesome sauce now.
Cute. Very good. So, Professor, that's a perfect lead-in to the program for the kids.
Right, allergy prevention for kids. I mean, we want to make sure they're getting the vitamins and minerals they need on a daily basis for a strong immune system, but also for everything else they're doing, the growth and all the changes that are occurring in their bodies. So that's where the Incredivites comes in. You've heard Kristen's story about Madison and alfalfa. That certainly matches with what we saw with our son when he was little. We never thought of calling it awesome sauce, but that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
You know, if they're old enough to swallow and they've got severe allergies, you can add the Nutriferon. But if the alfalfa does it by itself, that's great. We know the Optiflora is important for the friendly bacteria in the intestine. And with kids, partly because they're often on antibiotics so often, but for other reasons as well, they often have yeast overgrowth. So I think of the Optiflora as not only strengthening and normalizing the immune system, but really as a general preventative. And it's so easy for kids to swallow if they're not swallowing it. Barbara's often talked about just softening the coating in hot water. It goes down very easy. There's a chewable C to make sure they've got enough C and to provide that protein that they need. Some kind of smoothie drinks are often good. It really depends on how they eat, but there's so many kids that getting good, healthy protein into them can be a struggle, and it's not the sort of things that they normally gravitate to, particularly if they have asthma or any kind of inflammatory condition. The Mighty Smarts are great. But, we also have heard so much research in recent years about the omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, reducing things like ADD and ADHD, helping the learning process. So I kind of think of those Mighty Smarts as something that you want every kid to have, whether or not they have allergies. And then, of course, as Barb was talking about, if that cold sneaks up on you, that defend and resist can be great. So let's move to the next slide, and then we're moving on to adults and talk about one other product, and that's Immunity Formula I. Basically, what it does is it contains nutrients that are specifically designed for the immune system. So sometimes that, even though you may be taking Vital E or Vitalizer, that little extra may be helpful, particularly if you've got immune challenges. So that brings us to the summary for adults, which would be the Vitalizer to get those nutrients, omega-3s, the Optiflora, all of those things together that you need for really a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle, but also to make sure that your immune system has the nutrients it needs. The nutrifurine and alfalfa, and as I've said, often those three together are enough. And then the protein, vitamin C, again, you can get that from the Vitalizer, Optiflora from the Vitalizer. Extra garlic can be very helpful. Adding Immunity Formula I, and for both the adults and the kids, make sure you don't have those toxic cleaning products that can trigger the allergies or trigger the inflammation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the last slide so that Barbara can tell us about the picture.
oh, did you remember that? That was, well, I was thinking something that one of you said earlier, Hannah, I think, about children having to be indoors for the, here this beautiful weather, and so that was our grandson when I was making the PowerPoint up a while ago, and he was playing baseball, so I just stuck it in there to remind us that children should be outdoors, and it shouldn't be a scary place. That's the place where we all should be living. I was just looking at some of the questions that people were asking. Professor, someone was asking about why probiotics are important for the intestine. They thought it was for the stomach. You want to tackle that one?
So actually, I know where that sort of idea came from, because what we talk about is that, so in the first place, the probiotics, those friendly bacteria, actually reside in the intestine. So where you've heard stomach mentioned is the problem is getting those bacteria through the stomach safely, because the stomach is very acidic, and that will kill 97 to 99% of the unprotected bacteria. So that's where Shaklee's triple encapsulation process that ensures that those bacteria get through the stomach safely so they can actually take up residence in the intestine. That's what that's all about.
And if you think of the digestive system, I always find it helpful to think of it in kind of two parts. There's the upper part. That's where the stomach is. It's kind of, behind your rib cage. It's high. And then the lower part where the intestines go looping around back and forth, that's down like more where the belly part of your abdomen. And so one of the things we didn't talk in great detail tonight, but you will see there on our final slide, is that we're for those of you who may be new who are joining us tonight, one of the best places to start when you're starting a supplement program is with that Vitalizer box that you see there that contains 30 daily strips of 6 tablets a day on this daily strip. The Shaklee scientists put that together to give people the simplest but the most complete nutritional support that they could. There are 80 nutrients in those 6 tablets, but they only had spot for 6, and they considered the probiotics so essential that it became one of the 6 on the daily strip. That's how important that is. And what is so amazing about that particular product that really speaks to your question is that it's all about absorption, isn't it? There's lots of companies that make vitamin C, but as Hannah pointed out, the Shaklee C is a sustained release C. They took natural gums and waxes of plants, and to release, it's one of the few nutrients that can be absorbed through the entire length of the intestinal tract. And so in that Vitalizer with those 80 nutrients, you've got some nutrients that need to be absorbed in the stomach. If they don't break down in the stomach, you don't absorb. They can put folic acid in the tablet, but if it isn't released in the stomach, forget it. And then there are others that need to be released in the small intestine, and others lower into the lower intestine. That takes tremendous amount of science and expertise in figuring out absorption. I think it's 12 patents, isn't it, Steve, that are on that Vitalizer?
Absolutely. And Barbara, let me kind of come back to that picture there, because your story about talking about kids needing to be outdoors reminds me of the testimonial, the story that we included in this call a year ago when we brought one of our customers, actually his wife was a long-time customer. He kind of married into it, and she got him started on Shaklee. But he talked about when he was a kid growing up, he loved sports, he loved being outside, but his allergies were so severe. And if he played soccer, he would get massive nosebleeds, so bad he'd have to come home and stand in the bathtub until his nose stopped bleeding.
Oh, no.
And that wasn't from hitting the ball, that was just from being outdoors.
Oh.
And so we got married, his wife got him on the products, the Vitalizer, the Nupiferon, the Alfalfa. We got a call in early May when it kind of blew us away that he was first mowing his lawn in early May, but that's up your way. I think that happened.
Yeah.
We got this call, and he said, I just got in from mowing my lawn. That's wonderful. And I thought, who gets excited about mowing their lawn? But you have to realize that was the first time he'd ever been able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, allergies limit people a lot. And I remember years and years of having chronic upper respiratory stuff, just chronic, always. They didn't call it allergies back in the dark ages when I was growing up, you never can breathe, you never can smell anything. It's just such an effort to do anything, and I really am sympathetic about people with allergies. And when you find something that works so well and it's so simple, and we didn't even talk about the expense of allergy medications, but they are not cheap. And these products are so economical, and they just build health, and that's what we're all about. Joe, are there any other
question? Can toxic cleaners trigger allergies?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you go to healthtipsfromtheprofessor.com and just put allergy in the search box, I have references and studies where they've looked at that.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And how many alfalfa do you recommend for children, and how many for adults?
Answer is, it depends. But really, alfalfa is really food. I remember back when Dr. Scala was the head of Shaklee Research back in the 80s, and he did a lot of research on alfalfa, and he said, the only thing I wish were different about the Shaklee alfalfa is that it wasn't in tablets, because people think of it as a pill, and he said you really should think of it just as food. He said it's one of the healthiest foods you can eat. So what I tell people is you take it till you don't have symptoms.
Right.
Yeah. And in little kids, if they weigh, 25 pounds versus weigh 50 pounds, it doesn't matter. Just let them have it until the symptoms stop, and then you can cut back. But do you know the other benefits of alfalfa, which I don't know if you mentioned, Professor, but, the chlorophyll that's in alfalfa, it's like a natural deodorizer. Mm-hmm. So when you have alfalfa, you will not have body odor. You will never have bad breath.
Smelly feet.
Yeah, it's smelly feet. You will, there are a lot of other really wonderful benefits. It makes your body more alkaline, which is a much healthier, right? Mr. Steve, I don't know if we mentioned, is a renowned cancer researcher. We were told cancer does not grow in an alkaline environment. It thrives in an acid environment. So when we eat a lot of vegetables and we take alfalfa, we create a more alkaline environment for our body, which is much healthier.
And one last question: is there a good formula with Shaklee Get Clean products that can be used as a carpet cleaner?
Hannah, do you ever do that?
We have. You can get those, the ones that you rent for cleaning like the steamers, and you can put in Basic H, and actually, we used to use Basic G. If you
those two are great.
Germicidal effect as well. And it does a great job. I've had people tell me they've gotten things out of their carpets that they couldn't get out when they used just a regular steamer or even professional cleaning.
Yeah, they're excellent. Very good. Thanks for joining us. We're delighted that you come with us, and we love hearing the feedback of your stories and how folks do, especially this week on allergies. So have a happy, healthy week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.